Now, joining us in the studio today to discuss the North Korea denuclearization issue, we have with us Dr. Myong-hyun, a research fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Dr. Ko, thank you for coming in again.
Thanks for having me.
Now, let's go over some of the things I just said in that last report again. So, the US State Department spokesperson said, we're not going to provide a timeline for the denuclearization process for North Korea. Now, that does seem to come in stark contrast to what National Security Advisor John Bolton said over the weekend, who said that the US is ready to denuclearize, dismantle North Korea's nuclear program in 1 year if North Korea cooperates.
That's right.
What should we make of these two statements?
Well, it sounds like on the surface that John Bolton, National Security Advisor, is undermining Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. But I think that could be the case. Or also it could be that Mike Pompeo and John Bolton are playing this good cop, bad cop game on North Korea. But I think the net effect on North Korea will be this, regardless of what's really going on behind the scenes, is that from the North Koreans' point of view, from their perspective, the U.S. is asking North Korea to dismantle its nuclear program. There's no timeline about it. But it doesn't mean that there's no timeline. It means that the United States can be flexible about the dismantlement process. It doesn't mean that there's no deadline. I think that's the message that U.S. sending to North Korea at this moment.
I mean, that's what I want to talk about. So if there is no timeline, what can they come back with? There must be some sort of timeline, because there needs to be steps made by North Korea to show that they are doing some sort of denuclearization process. Do we have to trust North Korea to come up with their own timeline?
Well, that was pretty much the message that came out of the Singapore summit. I mean, President Trump said himself that there's no timeline, and also that he sounded like President Trump believed that Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, would take voluntary steps towards denuclearization. And every time North Korea takes a step towards denuclearization, that'll be evaluated by the United States government and then reciprocated in a way that could be amenable to North Korean interest. So then I think this is very much of a contingent kind of a process. So instead of having a very clear roadmap towards denuclearization, what it says is that both sides are going to take step-by-step approach, and each step they're going to agree or disagree whether this has been significant or not, then proceed to the next stage. So this is a more flexible approach, but on the other hand, it leaves so much to interpretation that could lead to some sort of a breakdown in the process too. So I think the U.S. government is engaging in a lot of risks right now. But then at the same time, it's putting pressure on North Korea by saying that this is the only game in town, and if you don't play this game, there'll be no more chance. I think that's the message that President Trump is trying to send.
Perhaps muddying the waters further at the moment is this statement, this phrase that has emerged over North Korea's denuclearization process over the last few days. The State Department said very recently that the goal remains the final fully verified denuclearization of North Korea, which has been dubbed by the media FFVD.
That's right.
That comes in contrast to what they've said before, which is CVID, the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. What do we make of this new phrase? Is it just an accident that a spokesperson said just came out of it wrong, or is it signal a different change in direction from the White House?
No, I doubt it. I think it's re-emphasizing the U.S. government's commitment to CVID. I mean, if you really go into the semantics of each term here, fully and then final, I think they're connected to a complete and irreversible in this case. So it's just essentially like rephrasing the same terminology again, so that you could, I mean, in a way to emphasize again what the key points are in this case, which is like complete and irreversible. So I think that's what the spokesperson is trying to send as a message to North Korea and the domestic audience.
So you're saying there's no difference between CVID and FFVD as such, because some were saying CVID was unrealistic in the first place anyway. Maybe FFVD provides some sort of wiggle room, some sort of space that could be interpreted differently.
Oh, I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, it could be, I mean, I think about you have to be quite creative about finding a space in FFVD, I guess. So I think that it will be quite difficult to find a space like that here because you know, like if you look at the semantics of each term, the new terms that came up, it actually very closely connected to complete and irreversible, in my view. But then, in addition to that, I think Secretary Pompeo himself has come up with a different variation of CVID before. He called it PVID, like a permanent, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement. So this is another iteration of like a tendency like that on rephrasing CVID.
So we shouldn't look too far into the details, you say. Maybe the Trump administration themselves perhaps aren't that hung up on the details, so maybe we shouldn't either?
That's exactly correct. And at the same time, we have to remember that there are only two definitions of denuclearization at this moment. One is the one by North Korea, which is the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, which means that the denuclearization process not only pertains to North Korea, but also includes South Korea. And that's one. And then on the other hand, we have CVID or FFVD or CVID. So there are many variations like that, but they are all the same at the end of the day.
So you don't think North Korea would be perhaps more amenable to FFVD rather than CVID, which we know that they haven't been particularly willing to go along with either?
I think at the end of the day, what North Korea wants is not so much in the what are the letters the CVID is composed of, but I think they are interested in dropping some of the letters from CVID. For instance, they would like to drop V, verifiable, and I, irreversible. And that's the reason why they keep talking about complete denuclearization without V and I. So I think that's what the North Koreans would like to hear from the United States, but they're not hearing that right now.
Okay, let's move on to some other developments that are happening over the last couple of days. A South Korean delegation is in North Korea right now, playing some inter-Korean basketball games at the moment. So North Korean media, which is quite interesting, they've reported on it very quickly, and it seems to have quite a positive kind of atmosphere about its reporting. What do you make of these inter-Korean basketball games so far?
So this is very interesting because I think we are going through different phases of inter-Korean dialogue, and each phase is characterized by a theme. Last year, the theme, or the thematic was actually concert, singing. So last year we sent singers, and then they sent, North Korea sent singers back here in Seoul, so stage concerts. So that happened to be the stage of inter-Korean dialogue throughout early this year. Now we're talking about sports. So I think in that sense, it's the same thing that is going on before. In a way, this is another instrument, I would say, for both Koreas to expand the level of the inter-Korean dialogue.
As we all know, Kim Jong-un is a very big fan of basketball. Do you think he'll make an appearance at these games itself?
Well, he did appear on the South Korean concert earlier this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up again for the basketball match.
Do you think there'll be any significance, like for the fact that he is legitimizing these kind of games by turning up?
Well, the fact that it's going to be broadcast by the official North Korean TV is going to be a way to legitimize the whole encounter. But if Kim Jong-un himself shows up and is seen on the North Korean TV congratulating or talking to South Korean and North Korean players, is going to add another dimension to this encounter. So it's going to, from the North Koreans' point of view, it's going to be historic.
There are some reports saying that it might be broadcast live. That's probably very unlikely, right?
That could be possible. It really depends on what's the plan that the North Koreans have in mind. But I think that there could be some difficulties with broadcasting live because the presence of mixed race players on the South Korean squad. And we know that the North Korean society is very rigid and very nationalistic and even chauvinistic in many ways. And for the North Korean public to see mixed race South Korean players playing for South Korea could come across as a cultural shock. So if the North Korean state is worried about such impact on the North Korean population, they could decide not to broadcast it live and come out with an edited version later.
There's been another round of inter-Korean talks happening today in Korea that took place in Panmunjom, and this time it's cooperation over forestry projects. We've seen rail and road projects discussions before, but now it's going over to forestry. Can you explain to our viewers a little bit about why forestry and what the two sides are looking to achieve in these talks?
Well, forestry is quite important for North Korea right now because there are for environmental reasons, but also for agricultural reasons. North Korea has been suffering from low agricultural productivity because of soil erosion. And soil erosion happened because North Koreans don't have access to ready source of energy, so they've been cutting down trees to supplement their energy basket. So that led to deforestation, which in turn led to soil erosion, which also increased the chance of major flooding happening, which actually did happen, the latest one being the one in 2016. So reforestation of North Korean mountains is actually very important for North Korea, obviously, but also from South Korea's perspective. If you look at the different dialogue that's going on between the two Koreas right now, such as connecting the two Koreas by railroad and reforestation and plus additional things, they're all actually being developing. We bring focus to developing the infrastructure in North Korea. These are the very basic stuff that North Korea needs to jumpstart its economy.
Is there any risk of violating international sanctions? Because there has been a concern with the roads and rail negotiations that have happened over the last week. With forestation, is there perhaps more leeway to find some sort of way to cooperate without violating those UN sanctions which are imposed on North Korea right now?
So there are different ways to see this, but then the most important clause that we have to look into in this case is a catch-all clause that's included in the UN sanctions Security Council Resolution 2270. There's a catch-all clause there that states that anything that benefits the operational capability of the North Korean military is banned from taking place. So if they are, clearly connecting the railroad improving the railroad system in North Korea could be in violation of sanctions, but then reforestation could actually fall under the category of humanitarian assistance, especially if we are only talking about lending technical assistance without providing them with materials, especially the construction materials. Then if we limit the scope of our cooperation with North Korea in a reforestation project, then I think it's going to be basically be free from this kind of scrutiny from the international community.
Interesting. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for coming in as usual and sharing your insights with us.
Oh, thank you so much.